Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Greetings to all attendees around the world who are here with us for Wacom's Connected Inc. Global Conference. My name is Tommy Gustafson. I'm part of Teradici, and I'm joined with Dave Moore as well. And we're going to be doing a session. It's actually Teradici's second session of the conference. We're doing a session today about remote learning and education use cases for creatives with Teradici and Wacom Solutions. So we're going to give you a crash course and 101 on what we can do for you in terms of building a hybrid learning environment, training and simulation, future-proofed for all of the wonderful creative use cases that exist today. We're going to talk about many customers and customer use cases who have done it successfully with Teradici and Wacom thus far. So like I said, I'm joined with Dave Moore, who's our Director of Strategic Alliances. Again, my name is Tommy Gustafson. I'm our Strategic Alliance Sales Manager. And Kevin Ottemeyer, who you may have seen on the previous Teradici presentation, also played a huge part in developing this content. And he won't be speaking on the session today, but we wanted to make sure that he was tagged and included as well, and is a fantastic resource for anyone who's seeking to learn more and do a deep dive on Teradici for this use case and others. So with that said, let's dive into the presentation. And we're first by talking about level trends and really the developments over the past few years with respect to cloud and hybrid learning, and especially COVID, and how that's impacted the way that universities and other organizations build education and training and learning environments. So I think the first goal and the first trend that we've seen for most organizations and really every business worldwide, but especially with education, is figuring out how to harness the cloud and how to drive operational efficiency, how to benefit from the economics of adopting the cloud. And that's really one of the biggest trends, obviously in technology, that's been overarching for the past decade or so, but really specifically within education. Most education companies, most educational organizations are seeking to adopt the cloud to some degree. Secondly, of course, is the rise in STEM and STEAM programs, renewed focus and investment in especially North America and really many regions throughout the world, as we've seen, investing heavily in technology for students, really at even the youngest ages, where you're trying to deploy robotics classes and engineering and coding training programs, really a new wave of entirely new engineering, math, and science programs that are being rolled out. And it's an extremely exciting time. But of course, there's a huge technology demand behind supporting those kinds of initiatives. And we'll talk about that today as well. Then you see as well, we're all about creating equitable access to technology and devices. And especially with Teradici now being an HP company, that's part of HP's mission and global vision, is really leveling the playing field and creating equitable access to technology and devices. As well, along the same lines, right, using technology and the devices to deliver a high quality learning experience, not only on campus, but remotely and really anywhere around the world as well. That's the ultimate goal, is to be able to deliver the highest quality learning experience, whether students are on campus in a classroom, learning from home, or learning from somewhere else on the go. And lastly, this is obviously super important, is strengthening security and compliance and strengthening the ability to control confidential and sensitive data, especially with students, again, learning from not only on-campus labs, but remotely on public internet. And there's never been a greater need to have a strong security and compliance posture in the education space. Hey, Dave, I'll toss it back to you if I've missed anything here for any additional comments and insight. I know you always have some really interesting things to say.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job, and I would elaborate on security a little bit. As students, the last thing that we're really thinking about is how do we keep our network secure? And so oftentimes from a perspective of the educational institution or the commercial institution, it really solely relies on their shoulders. And so being able to just basically take away the concern of having to have students trained in security and know all the gotchas. You just send them pixels and keep it as safe and secure as possible and keep your network safe. So
Yeah, it's fantastic, Dave. I think that's a teaser and something folks will want to stick around for to see later when we get into the architecture. I think you'll touch upon what we do specifically with regard to security. And it's very unique to our protocol in Teradici and Wacom as well. For really whatever device you're using, you have full confidence knowing the data is not going anywhere. So excited to see when we get into that. And yeah, folks, I think it's important to talk about what we've observed working with so many customers, universities, K through 12, um, other types of organizations, especially in the public sector, who are deploying education, training, and simulation environments and use cases across the world. These are some of the key challenges we've seen and what we help customers respond to every day. Again, security is at the forefront and top of mind, protecting information, data, and assets. Um, Secondly, hardware is a huge challenge. Everyone knows about the supply chain challenges that are going on globally, price increase, supply shortage, all the associated challenges with that, procurement. And going back to what we just talked about, that's also driven a continued and even accelerated migration to the cloud, right? Which helps eliminate a lot of the dependencies and the complications of hardware management, device management, and so forth. But definitely, it's something we're able to help with being part of HP in terms of device management, supporting massive amounts of training environments, really at any scale and in any breadth of use case as well. It's something that we're very skilled at, and you'll find we're very cost effective in that aspect as well. Remote exam delivery, distance learning, that's a no-brainer. It's something that really every organizational institution needs to be thinking about and responding to, and helping their students access resources remotely and really from anywhere in an effective way. It's imperative that organizations do that and really develop a strong, scalable strategy around remote and hybrid learning. Network and wireless connection too. It's kind of one of a more granular point, but folks are always looking for the best performance. We all know how frustrating it is to not have a web page or application load quickly, to be stuck in an area with bad reception or bad internet. And it's something that Teradici does very effectively, is help students help ensure students have a consistent, high quality learning experience, no matter where they are, even if there are challenges with the internet connection and poor signal and latency. So excited again, we're going to get into that a bit later with details. And then lastly is faculty and administrative use and collaboration, right on from the teacher and administrative side. It's very important that institutions and organizations are able to deliver the right resources for faculty, especially because the turnover in education can be high, especially these days. You want to be able to retain the top quality talent and staff that are delivering education, right? All the faculty and administration, providing them the right resources as well as students is very important, and giving them the ability to manage their students and manage their labs autonomously and in a simple way is again very imperative. So these are some of the challenges we're going to get into, and I think you'll find that the combination of Teradici Cloud Access software, Teradici by HP, with Wacom's devices, and with the right GPU resources is the perfect recipe for delivering a modern hybrid learning environment. And so I'm going to toss it over to Dave here to take the reins. He's going to get into the specifics of the solution, what it is, how it works, and really why you should check it out. Following this presentation, give us a call, send us an email, and get online with us and get connected and try this for yourself if you're not already using it. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Dave, and very pleased to hear what Dave has to say in the next few slides.
Thanks, Tommy. I really appreciate that. And this is really exciting, and it's a really exciting topic for me because, as you can see, I'm also a Wacom user, and absolutely love my Sync 24. And have doing, I have things that I'm learning. I draft out furniture, I draft out houses, I build furniture and things like that. So this is kind of a topic that's near and dear to my heart because it's something that I use consistently. And I don't just use it locally. So I get to tell you about that today. All right, let's just jump into the next slide here. Let's talk about why Teradici for Education and what really sets us apart. First and foremost, we've been in a very unique situation with COVID and the pandemic, right? So the first thing right out of the gate is, where are students going to learn from? And the answer is everywhere. They're learning from everywhere now. They're learning from anywhere. They're trying to connect from anywhere at any given time so they can do what they need to do to pass their courses, to learn. And that goes for not just students, right? That goes for folks like me who I'm trying to learn things when I'm on the run. I'm now finally starting to travel a little bit more, so I have the ability to take some of these products with me and also still be creative on the go. So first and foremost, connect students from anywhere. Secondly, and this is really a very most important point to me, is don't stifle the creativity of the creative student, right? As soon as you introduce lag or a network that just isn't performing or an application that isn't performing, it's really, really difficult to keep the creative juices flowing. And so for me, this is a must, and we've been able to crack that nut and make sure that we provide the utmost, highest possible response that you can have. You don't really know that you're drawing in the cloud. You feel like you're drawing right on your tablet. So that's a very important point to me. The second one, or the third one, excuse me, is really comes around reducing cost. Since you no longer need these high-powered workstations in front of you, you can access high-powered workstations in the cloud, something that's been racked or virtualized. You do not have to go out and spend $5,000 to $10,000 on a box to put under your desk just so that you can have the performance that you're wanting, and then let it sit there the rest of the time. So, you could look at this as a green solution in some ways, because we're reducing the footprint of electricity being used and compute being used when it's not necessary, and also reducing your overhead and cost. Not to mention like simplified management. If you can manage all your resources in a single environment, that simplifies a lot very quickly. Going on to number 4 goes along with the last point, which is increased security. Because you don't have to have these workstations and keeping all the content right there on a USB, accessible on the hard drive, possibly a security breach point, maybe through somebody's email on that machine, that can be of concern. So by keeping all of the data in a remote facility that has security protocols that keep all that locked down, and just simply shipping pixels back to the end users, the students, there's no actual data for them to risk. So it's a very secure solution. How secure? Well, we have a lot of government agencies that like this product because we're shipping just pixels. So it's a very important point, and it's a very simple and easy way to increase your security. And then lastly, it's all about getting students together when they can't be together, right? How do we collaborate with artists? I have a few friends that are also artists, one in Japan and one in California, and the two constantly collaborate, but they don't fly back and forth, right? They collaborate in real time, and they use similar solutions and Teradici as well to do this. So it's very amazing tool, and it does spur on creativity of not just one student, but a whole group, and allows teachers to obviously engage with their students. So this is why I love this solution. I think these are the top 5 reasons, for Teradici, Wacom, and education to come together and have one of the best solutions possible. Next slide. All right, so let's get into the details of the product. It's actually quite simple. So there's not a lot of technical content that I'm going to give you here, but I'm going to break it down into ways that you can understand how it functions. So at the very bottom right-hand side of the slide, you see our endpoints. And endpoints are really something that we can quickly download to your device: tablet, laptop, thin client, workstation, if that's what you have. And that's your starting point. From there, on the host side, the pink side up there, you notice that can be an on-prem workstation. It could be a laptop in a rack. It could be a laptop in an office, a workstation, virtual workstations, or a cloud environment, right? So I happen to manage our Amazon environment or Amazon partnership. And one of the big things we have there, we were talking about GPUs, is the access to like G4s and now G5s and even Mac instances now. And so that gives you some more flexibility than maybe what you would have on-prem. So we'll talk about different environments like the hybrid environments here shortly. And so very simply, what happens is the endpoint reaches out to the host. It validates that it's a trusted host, and it connects via PC over IP, and we start shipping you pixels. It's really that simple. All of your peripherals, your monitor, your keyboard, your mouse, all of that works right out of the gate. And we even support up to multiple 4K monitors, so you can even get the fidelity that you're used to if you're used to having a large monitor setup. And that's actually what I have. I'm presenting right now from a large 5K monitor, actually, and that's what I use for all my remote work with Teradici as well. There's one other component. I'm going to save it for the next slide, which is CAZ Manager. If we can go ahead and go to the next slide. And CAZ Manager gives us the ability to ultimately build and manage our environments. It's what makes the efficiency of deploying new workstations for users and making sure that everybody has access to what they need. It gives us the ability to identify what resources should go to who, and it also gives us the ability to manage our hybrid environment. So it could be an all cloud environment, it could be an all on-prem environment, or it could be a hybrid environment in multiple different ways. And so as you can see, there's the way that we have this laid out, you can see that we have virtualized workstations, which is that first image to the left where you have PCOIP agents running on those virtualized workstations. You have workstations that are non-virtualized that maybe an engineer would access, or maybe you have a large render that you need to do of a home and you need to get all the shading and lighting correct, and that takes some horsepower. So maybe you're going to use something larger than the virtualized workstation. And then to add to all this, the admin console is really easy to access. You can access it via web page, and this can be run in two ways. You can run it on a dark site, meaning it doesn't have to have access to the internet. This would be all intranet based. You can also have access remotely into a outward-facing app web page, and we can run that as a service, if you will. So next page. And this gets into some of the architecture examples. We're going to start on that left-hand side and go through a hybrid example. And I probably won't spend too much time on this because we've kind of started touching on these already. But this is where a piece comes into play called the connector. That's our CAZ connector that gives us the ability to basically reach out to a cloud service. And that's always necessary when you're running in a cloud service. So just to keep that in mind if you are looking at deploying this in a hybrid or cloud environment. So top left-hand side, imagine that these are a bunch of G5 workstations inside of Amazon. We can tell CAZ Manager to allocate those to a certain set of users. We can also then have our on-prem users, which is that bottom left-hand box. And you can see it looks to them, it looks like one environment. They can access local machines, they can access machines in the cloud. And that's all facilitated through CAZ Manager and its permissions that are given to users. So one user could have a very basic workstation, and the next user up could have a very, very high-end workstation for them, or they could have a mix of both. So the possibilities of mix and matching power to the user or multiple workstations to one user is definitely there, and that's all through CAZ Manager. You'll now see the remote users coming in. And now this is where I think collaboration really becomes key. If I have some folks out in Japan that I'm collaborating with in one of my groups, I would love to have their input. And so by giving them a PC over IP agent, they can tag in and they can see what work I'm working on, they can contribute to the work, and they can start facilitating within our environment without any crazy networking schemas. It works, and that's what's beautiful about it. If you need to wrap a VPN around things, we can certainly do that. We can also cut the VPN out and streamline that and still give you a secure environment. So on the right-hand side, it's a simplified version of what I just explained. Again, emphasizing that there's virtual workstations, there are physical workstations, and access can be given to different users remotely or locally or even globally. I think that's an appropriate word there. And in this case, we have CAZ Manager running as a service. And we'll talk a little bit more about the two different scenarios coming up. We did add in the MFA controller. And the big thing about this is obviously you want to make sure that your environment's secure. Again, just building on that security practice. Just because you're shipping pixels and it is secure, you can then overlay, make sure that you have the right user credentials, that they're mapped, that it is a validated user as well. All right. I'm sure there's going to be questions on this slide, and Kevin Ottomeyer can go in the details of breaking down some of these architectures and getting into the details of the setup. He's not here to explain that today, but like Tommy mentioned, feel free to reach out to him. Let's go on to the next slide.
Yeah, Dave, so I just want to put a wrapper on this one. I think this is a really important piece for folks. If you're taking something away from this presentation, one thing should be flexibility. Unparalleled flexibility, right? With Teradici and Wacom, you're not tied to any infrastructure or any cloud. You're not tied to using any specific kind of device. On the contrary, you can use whatever combination of clouds, on-premises infrastructure, existing servers and storage. You can have students bring their own devices, laptops. You can adopt super cost-effective thin clients and zero clients, provide those to folks. You can still purchase and utilize and leverage, expensive on-premises, under the desk workstations like we've talked about with GPUs inside them. And you can leverage the GPUs in the cloud. Think of Teradici as the software, and Teradici by HP as the software and glue that connects all of those resources and gives you a super flexible environment. And that's why it's so cost effective. So with flexibility comes unparalleled cost effectiveness and return on your investment. Again, on premises or in the cloud, and investing in whatever type of devices will make it work for you. And the flexibility of the solution really is unparalleled.
Very good points. Very good points.
Yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now. Thanks, Dave.
No, that's great. That's very, very good points. And that is the important thing to take away from that slide is, again, just to reiterate what you just said, was flexibility. So we have a couple license server options. And I mentioned these earlier, dark site or open sites. A lot of our government entities will choose to do the license server option, where they run the license server on-prem versus tagging out to our as a service cloud licensing model. That license server does run in Amazon and connects into, validates, and allows you to manage your environment via CAZ Manager. So there's some benefits to going back and forth between the two. But if you have to absolutely have a lockdown environment, obviously the license server option is your best option here. And there's some flexibility in there. There's some unique things that you can do with these. And so you can still manage your remote users. You can still have access via VPN. Obviously, those are the key components. Make sure security is always first and foremost. But again, to reiterate, dark site and open sites is kind of how I categorize these. Cloud licensing options fit 99% of most of our customers, but then we have some further options there. Tom, anything that you'd want to add on to this?
No, you captured this well, Dave. Just any kind of dark site use case, you've got it locked down. No pun intended.
Yeah, and then there's some flexibility with the cloud licensing too. So if you needed to burst into having 50 more users, it's a quick phone call to Teradici to get those licenses set up, and they're immediately allocated into the cloud model. So then you can immediately start consuming and deploying those. Whereas if you have a dark site, you will have to get the license file, you will have to download and update the license file, and then you would be able to do those. So it saves you a few steps, but there's a purpose and reason for both.
Yeah, I think, Dave, just one thing to add there now that you said it, I think, with everything that comes with cloud bursting, scaling out quickly. I think it's important to note you don't have to be a cloud expert to be able to take advantage of these features. And we do have a highly talented and consultative support team, solution architects who work closely with our cloud partners to ensure that you've got all the right things set up, from redundancy and load balancing to make sure that you have high availability as well. Again, we're thinking very enterprise grade here in terms of building things for failure, giving you those enterprise grade management capabilities. But even for smaller environments that are not thousands and thousands of users too, you still get that goodness even with small environments. And then yeah, again, it's flexibility, cost effective, easy to adopt the cloud without being an expert.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's move on and talk about
Yeah.
latency. If you've ever used a remoting solution of any kind, you've probably experienced latency at some point in time. And then now that we're talking about Wacom tablets, talking about latency while you're drawing. And I mentioned this early on and said that this is probably the most key point that I can make that's most important to me, is that if I was trying to draw and I was having latency, I would be like, no go, this isn't going to work. I'm not going to do this. But the reality is we've worked very closely with Wacom and their engineering team and have created a local termination function, which allows me to draw on the tablet. I see that happening right then and there. There's no lag to it. And what we do is in the background, we're capturing all that information. And if there is a point in lag, right, we're monitoring bandwidth, we're monitoring latency, all that. We're basically recording your information while you're drawing it, and we're sending it after the fact. So we're not trying to give you pixels that you're drawing and getting that going round trip. You're seeing exactly what you're drawing, so you're getting it right then and there, and then the data is being sent afterwards. So that's one of our unique ways of making sure that you don't have latency between what you're drawing and what's being shown. Is we're simply doing it after the fact. It removes the latency concern altogether. And frankly, I've used this over a span of, I think the maximum was 1,500 miles to my data center that I was drawing in. And everything felt literally local, as local termination says. So pretty amazing, very cool feature, and you don't get that lag, and I can't emphasize that enough. So with CAZ or Cloud Access software by Teradici, this is a feature that's built in. Next slide.
Yeah, this is a reason to try us out, folks. Put this feature to the test.
Yeah, that's really the only way I tell people to convince people is like, hey, I can tell you until I'm shot in the face, but you know what? Just draw it and find out for yourself. Now, here's another reason why that works so well and why we can manage such large images at the speed and minimal bandwidth is our dynamic auto offload feature. So for machines that have a GPU in them, we're able to take all the data that we would normally encrypt and compress and stream. And instead of doing that on a CPU, we're going to do that on a GPU. And the speed is significantly faster. And the GPU doesn't have to work hard for it at all, whereas like a CPU would. So the benefit here is that, one, there's no tuning. Nothing's required to do this. This is something that out of the gate, we provide you. You don't have weird spiky workload, meaning if you suddenly rotated a large image, your CPU is going through the roof and it's struggling to get you an image from the remote server. There's a consistency factor there with the way the applications work and the fact that we constantly have this small stream coming from the GPU, and it doesn't take many GPU cycles. It's the same amount no matter how large your file is. So no weird artifacts. Using the GPU, we have a lot of power there. We can do some special processes, making sure that nothing is missing. It's part of our lossless build to lossless imaging function, and that's just some of our magic sauce that we're able to code into the product and make sure that we give you a color perfect picture. And of course, because we're doing this on GPU, the compression that we can get and the encryption that we can get, we don't consume a lot of bandwidth or network consumption. So these are very key features. I would leave you with this slide saying that We utilize the GPU in a fashion to give you the best performance possible, and that's what you should take away from that one. Tommy, any comments on that?
Nope, you captured it well, Dave. Let's keep it moving.
All right. So always a question, we got a list of questions here. I'm not going to read every one of them because I know all of you are starting to read those already. But there's a checklist when you're starting to consider desktop virtualization, excuse me. What you have today in your environment, does it meet your needs, or is it time to update? Is it time to take a better look at a better way to manage your workloads, right? In this case, we're probably talking about a number of artists coming and going and different requirements from different applications. So those are things that I would consider. How much do I need on a workstation? Am I able to virtualize some workstations? What does that cost look like? And should I use cloud? What does that cost look like? And these are questions that our field teams are more than happy to work with you on and talk through because we've had a lot of experience with it. And as Tommy keeps mentioning, we are now an HP company, and so we do have a variety of solutions that are tuned for this purpose specifically. Security. Do you want to boost your security? Do you have a methodology? Can you still provide the performance today with what you're doing? If the answer is no, immediately you should just say, call Teradici, we'll figure this out right now. You can do a POC, a test very, very quickly. It's an easy install. Take you less than an hour to get up and running if you have the right kind of host machine and pretty much any agent. So just keep that in mind. It's not a difficult solution to implement. Efficiency and maintenance. We talked about CAZ Manager in terms of being able to push out new users, quickly get more licensing if you're running in a hybrid or cloud environment. A lot of different things to consider there. And of course, just how you maintain your local environments if you're doing on-prem maintenance yourself, or if you're going to be using a cloud infrastructure of a sort. So there are a lot of benefits to that cloud infrastructure with no maintenance. And there's a lot of solutions out there that we partner with where you don't even have to manage them. They can be auto-managed. So there's some unique things there. All right, and then of course, endpoint devices. Do you want to let your users bring their own device, be able to cover a wide range of things? Some people are going to say no. Some people are going to say yes. I happen to have a Mac. I have a PC. I have a tablet. I have a bunch of different devices that I access or use Teradici on rather to access remote machines. So just depending on if I'm on the move or not. And then to me, I won't read the last one, but to me, the most important one is, are your artists happy with what you're giving them today? Are they being able to continue being creative? Are you stifling their creativity? Are they running something like RDP and they're getting pixelation, they're getting lag, they're getting latency known issues, they're dropping data? There's a lot of things that happen across different protocols, and we're very proud to say that, being an Emmy award-winning company on the engineering side for our solution in media entertainment really kind of shows our dedication to the arts side of the world and building this purpose-built for graphic intensive workloads. It's just what we do, and we do it very well. Is your user happy with their experience? And if not, give us a call right away, because it's where we have been able to really impress people and get them started and keep them running efficiently. Tommy, anything else you want to cover here?
Yeah, you got it, Dave. I think, one piece, we've talked a lot, about, I think, just straightforward education, university, learning environments. I think for other folks who may be tuning in, hopefully from just another type of enterprise, really in any space. If you're not part of a university, that's fine. Think of using this type of solution for new hire training, onboarding. We have game studios who have spun up, temporary learning labs for 30 days to train folks on things like Unreal Engine or Unity,
Yep.
right? So think like a university, even if you're not a university, because this really does unlock a full new world of offering folks a high quality, extremely robust. Again, it's designed for artists. It's designed for the most demanding users. So this is going to knock the socks off of just an ordinary, employee too for other use cases and students. I mean, it's just a no-brainer if you want to deliver a high-quality remote experience. Yeah, I'm rambling at this point. Uh, let's move on, Dave. Let's talk about a real use case, a real customer.
I like it. I guess I can kick us off here. So the Vancouver Film School, obviously going through the pandemic, as you can imagine, how do you train your students and how do you keep them moving through their curriculum, right? Obviously the world's not coming to a full stop and we've got to keep learning and whatnot. So uh, VFS in short, or Vancouver Film School. If I say that so many times, I'll start slurring it all together. So I'll say VFS. They have a number of different programs around film, animation, video, and game production. Yes, VR and AR development. We do work there too. Motion and interactive design, and so many more. And really, the gist of it is, if it has graphics, they're teaching it essentially. Is that fair to say, Tommy?
Pretty much.
And so, as you can imagine, if you've ever tried to use something like Premiere remotely, there's a challenge with that. And so, how do you get students that are now at home, maybe on really low bandwidth, poor internet connections? How do you get them to get access to these applications with various computers, right? They might not have a Mac Pro or a hefty Windows machine with lots of RAM and storage on it, right? So how do you do that? That's really becomes the challenge. And then of course a security component of how do you keep all those devices secure if you are sending out now heavy duty workstations or expensive Macs and whatnot. So Tommy, you want to talk about the solution just a little bit?
Yeah, let's do that. So I think, in terms of the number of seats, this was right around 360, 365, I believe. It's very simple. Whether students are using Windows, Mac, or Linux devices, they would download our Cloud Access software agent onto their device. The IT team used CAZ Manager, which Dave, of course, went into detail on, to deploy each workstation, allocate the right identity management, applications, profiling, images, all of that good stuff. It's very simple to do, and that, again, that console and simple UI. And then, yeah, I think just moving on into the results here, I'll talk about the first one, and Dave, hand it back to you if you want to go into more. But I think the first one here really stands out in terms of rapid deployment and agility. Literally 1 week after the campus closed, Vancouver Film School was able to deploy this remote learning environment with Teradici with Wacom devices for students, right? And they did not miss a beat. So it's unbelievable when you think of how much time and money, education, right, tuition goes down the drain if they were not able to do this in 1 week, say 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And that's happened with many, many universities. And I
Absolutely.
think, yeah, and I think no matter the context, right, this is with COVID and with education, just the takeaway here is you can get this thing spun up in a week. It doesn't matter if you need to get something with, like, we have got 90 new contractors coming aboard in a month. What the heck do we do? This is your easy button, right? We've got to get a dark site spun up on a submarine with a mission critical environment, like in 2 days. Boom, right? This is, again, the easy button for that. So that's my takeaway is the agility and the rapid deployment. Dave, I'll let you cover off on the next ones here and anything you have to say on what I just
Yeah,
said.
I think I'll just close out with the last point on this slide, which is not only are they catering to what was just their local students, everybody that used to come to school, and they have this great tool now that they can remote access, they can remote in and have access to all the applications and everything else they were working on. But now this school can actually offer remote classes worldwide. So this expands the horizon of who and where you can work with. And we kind of started this off with students want to be able to work from anywhere, anytime, any place. And Teradici is delivering that. And Vancouver Film School is one of those cases that prove out that it's easy to deploy. It provides an incredible experience despite latency challenges with kids at home or students at home. And then lastly, being able to really deliver this solution globally to students from anywhere, or even collaborators and teachers from anywhere. So now they can have teachers from Japan, they can have teachers from, say, Russia, coming in and collaborating with students from all over the world. So this is it's a pretty hefty and strong solution, yet it's still very simple to install and get going with. So I think those are the major points that I like to make on this Vancouver Film School, excuse me, and leave it at that.
Fantastic, Dave. So yeah, I think that about does it for the slides and this portion of the presentation. We're super happy to take questions now. I think we may have seen a couple come in through the chat already, but yeah, we'd love to take your questions. And again, our call to action here is try the solution for yourself with Teradici, with Wacom. If you've got Wacom devices and are not using Teradici today, immediate reason to give us a call and try it and battle test us and test out all these features and everything we're talking about. Make us prove it to you that it's the best and the gold standard in the industry, which we believe it is. So thank you so much, folks. Dave, any other closing comments before we go into
Thank you for your
questions?
time. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the show.